Hello, my name is Alad Zohar with Making Space in Music, and today I'll be talking about unique conducting patterns. So unique conducting patterns are basically patterns that stray away from things that I've already talked about and things you may have seen in your conducting or marching arts journey. So for example, with 4/4 in focal time, when we meet on a single ictus, something that is more on the fundamental level of the way that we conduct 4/4, and it's something that everyone should know. Some conductors actually learn something called rainbow conducting or multi-point conducting, which basically would look something like 1, 2, 3, 4. And what that does is essentially gives multiple focal points or articulation points that the ensemble would then have to interpret. Now in general, it's something that you should know because it can be taken advantage of in certain stylistic moments, specifically music that's very bouncy. What's important to recognize though is that by creating multiple points, those are multiple points that your ensemble would then have to interpret for time. And the way that we would best approach creating a consistent way for them to interpret tempo is by hitting the same plane every time. The way to practice this, much like previous exercises, is to sit on a table or sit at a table or some flat surface and have your elbow resting so that when we bounce, we're creating a consistent relative location to our elbow and we're trying to keep that articulation point nice and flat across this plane. That is one technique that you could learn. In 3/4, it would be down, out, and up. And in 2/4, it would basically just be the classic focal point because you can't really do rainbow conducting in 2/4. Now, looking into a 4/4 pattern, in stop time, there's actually two different styles for stop time. The first being dry and the second wet. Dry is what we've already learned, which looks like this, where we have a very, very clear stopping point, which is going to make the beat look very, very rigid. But if you want to have a little more bounce to the feel of your conducting, you can take advantage of wet stop time, which will actually have a little bit of bounce leading into 2 and 4. It'll look something like this. You'll notice that this bounce is very, very minimal, but it does create a wetness to our stop time conducting, which will then be interpreted with a little more bouncy feel. So now looking into some unique time signatures, if we're dealing with some sort of multimeter or something that falls into the 6/8, 7/8, 5/8 region, we should learn how to interpret our compound pulse, or rather if we're working in 3/4 and jumping to 6/8, we need to understand how to feed pulse according to the hard beats of those measures. So for example, from 3/4, which has a duple feel, 1 and 2 and 3 and, going to 6/8, which has a compound feel, 1 and 2 and we need to understand how to feed that information. And realistically, the patterns are going to be very, very similar. It's really when we get more into the odd time signatures that we're going to see a little more challenge in the way that we interpret those measures. So in 6/8, once again, 6/8 will be interpreted, generally speaking, as a 2/4 bar, 1, 2, 1 and 2 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? Or if you're ever dealing with some sort of hemiola where the 3/4 bar is given strong beats on 1 and the end of 2, you may actually choose as a stylistic intent to conduct to that 3/4 bar as a 6/8 bar. So you'd see something like 1, 2, 3, 1 and 1, 2, 3, 1 and just like that. When we're dealing with odd meters like 5/8 or 7/8, we'll still have hard beats, which are the beats that we'd be conducting, but within that, one of those will be subdivided with more eighth notes than another. So for example, when dealing with 7/8, we may divide the bar into something that looks like 2 plus 2 plus 3 eighth notes, and that would be conducted as a 3/4 bar because there are 3 segments of hard beats, but that third beat has 3 eighth notes in length. So altogether, it would look something like 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1 and 2 and 1, 2, 3, 1 and 2 and 1, 2, 3. And likewise for 5/8, if we were to subdivide it into 2 and 3, it would maybe look something like 1, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. So with odd meters, we start to fall into a more unique conducting pattern that really heavily relies on internal pulse and an understanding of odd mixed meters. The other thing to recognize is that those 5/8s and 7/8s might also be subdivided differently according to the music. For example, if that 7/8 is divided instead of 2-2-3 into a 3-3-2, we would have to conduct according to what the pulse of that measure is. So with a 3-3-2, it would look like 1-2-3, 1-2, 1-2, 1-2-3, 1-2, 1-2. Still a 3-4 bar in shape, but we would be conducting that first beat with the 3 eighth note subdivision and the other 2 beats with the 2 eighth note subdivision. And the other option could obviously be a 2-3-2. So those are things that you should practice and just check out. Recognize that you may not see a lot of marching music in these odd mixed meters, but if you do, it'll be something to know. One other thing that I'd love to recognize is that there are a lot of different ways to conduct, and a lot of different regions and styles will teach different techniques. So for example, in 3-4, we taught a down, out, up, but you may see 3-4 conducted in, out, up, and that's something that really does come down to style. Some people believe that's a clear way to conduct a 3-4 because at the very least you have 3 unique looking beats, and some people believe that it can be easily confused with a 4-4. So they prefer bringing the hands together and making that the thing that makes it uniquely distinguishable. Once again, it all comes down to preference. I think that as far as what you choose to conduct and how you choose to conduct it, it really has to come down to how can it best be interpreted from an ensemble. And so the way that you conduct just needs to be clean and concise. And that's really the only important things that you should weigh in your decision of what you choose to do. Beyond that, it is up to you, and that is how you will develop a unique style as a conductor. And with that said, my name is Alad Zohar, and I'll see you next time.